There you go. 4-punch, 5-punch, 6-punch combination. Body shot, bang, 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 bang.
Telling him not to counterpunch.
Boom! Will Rackman get up?
Iron. You're going through all the instructions. This is for the championship of the world. I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times.
Welcome, fight fans. It's time for the main event of the week. This is the Fight City podcast, and we are on episode 37, believe it or not. This is Alden Kodash, your host, being joined by Michael Carbert, the editor-in-chief of the Fight City. How are you tonight, Michael?
I'm doing just fine, Alden. How are you?
I'm doing really well. We got probably one of the biggest fights, literally and figuratively, on the horizon. Of course, we're talking about Wilder versus Fury 2. I know you've seen it on the commercials for the Super Bowls, all you casual boxing fans that are just looking for a reason to spend all your money on a classic heavyweight fight. This is pay-per-view. And before we go into that, we're going to take a little bit of a dive into the lightweight division, where Ryan Garcia scored an 80-second knockout over Francisco Fonseca, a guy that's went 12 rounds with Tevin Farmer and has won went into the middle rounds with Gervonta Davis back at 130 pounds. So it was an impressive performance in that people thought this would be one of the guys that would test him and push him a little bit farther, give him some rounds. But, you know, another Ryan Garcia textbook, step back, left hook, knockout. I think he wanted to say in the post-fight interview that he was watching Sugar Ray Robinson's rematch with Gene Fulmer to inspire him to get that counter left hook. Obviously, long ways from there. But, you know, it's good to see that he's a student of the game. He's very young, 21 or 22. He's a Instagram sensation. You know, he's rising up the ranks into what's turning out to be a very exciting lightweight division. Now with Lomachenko seeming to be on his way down, back down to 130, you got a big slew of lightweights that are very young and very talented. And, of course, we're talking about Garcia, but also Devin Haney, Tank Davis, and, of course, Teofimo Lopez, who will be taking the biggest step up in class, sounds like in May, against Vasily Lomachenko. Michael, what do you look forward to when Teofimo Lopez fights Lomachenko?
Well, it's a fascinating matchup. It's one of the best matchups that can be made right now. I admire Lopez's eagerness to test himself against somebody who can be considered pound for pound, maybe the best fighter in the sport, definitely top 3. I don't think you can argue that. It's a really interesting matchup because for two major factors. One is that surprisingly, Lomachenko just celebrated a birthday recently. I mean, he's no spring chicken. He doesn't
Happy
have
birthday, Vasily Lomachenko. He turned 32 today.
Yeah, today. Okay, so there you go. I mean, his pro record is not terribly prolific considering his age, but he turned pro rather late. And I mean, for me, he still deserves to be considered pound for pound the best fighter in the sport. He's accomplished so much. He's taken major risks. He's moved up and faced one fighter after another who is naturally bigger, taller, heavier. But Lopez represents a serious challenge. There's no doubt about it. And it's not just the age factor, which may or may not be of some influence on the outcome, but also the fact that Lopez is definitely naturally a bigger, heavier, stronger athlete. It's a serious test for both fighters, which makes it a highly attractive matchup. And we're gonna learn something. I suspect we're gonna learn something very interesting about both men when that fight comes. So I'm greatly looking forward to it.
Yeah, something feels a little bit different from your typical Lomachenko outmatching his opposition and forcing them to quit or just recede into a shell. This feels like it has the makings of something that's going to be a little more tense, a little more dramatic. You mentioned Lomachenko turning 32. You know, you mentioned, you think about the old adage where, fighters can turn old overnight. This is not the kind of opponent that you want to, so to speak, turn old against or age overnight against. Teofimo Lopez has the equalizer here. He's got the one-punch knockout power. He's hardly really a lightweight. This guy, he's clearly on his last legs making 135 pounds. He could make it for this fight, but he's been telling everybody that he's not long from being an 140-pound fighter. Where on the other hand, you have Vasily Lomachenko saying to everybody that, he is not a 135-pound fighter. He's moving back down to 130. So, it's a crossroads in two different directions. You could, off that alone, make the conclusion that Teofimo Lopez is the bigger guy, the stronger guy, and he's also very athletic and young to fill in some of the gaps that Lomachenko has been able to exploit with prior opponents in terms of his hand and foot speed advantage. I think it's going to be very interesting. I do think Lomachenko just has too many weapons in his arsenal and has too sharp and keen of a boxing acumen to not find a way around the talented Lopez's skills and punching power. I think he's going to have to work a little bit harder than usual to do it in the early rounds, but I think he's going to eventually outwit him and overwhelm him mentally. But until then, it's going to be fun, and you never know because Lomachenko's been down before. He's clearly not comfortable at the lightweight limit against a guy who is hardly a lightweight right now. It could be a lot of fun.
I agree. It could be something very exciting and dramatic. Definitely, Lomachenko is going to have to be at his best. It's a terrific matchup. I won't be shocked at all if it does become a kind of one-sided clinic by Lomachenko. But he's going to have to be at his best. He's going to have to be sharp. I just have a feeling that this might end up being the biggest challenge of his career thus far. I could be wrong, but Lopez is something special. He's very powerful. He's very strong. He's a very gifted boxer. So I think it's a great matchup.
He's a very confident fighter to at all be taking this fight this early in his career.
Absolutely.
And he honestly gives the impression of a guy that has no doubts in his ability and that he's going to win the fight. He's one of the most mentally strong fighters in the sport, apart from Tyson Fury, who will be fighting this weekend for the second time against Deontay Wilder. Before we discuss, me and you, Michael, I'd like to bring in Derik Santos for a short interview. I got a chance to talk with him earlier today, trainer of Sullivan Barrera. He also has a fighter who's fighting on the undercard of the Fury-Wilder rematch, so he will be there live for the fight. And without any further ado, here is Derik Santos.
All right, this is Alden Kodash here with trainer of Sullivan Barrera, Derik Santos. How are you doing today, Derik?
How are you, Alden? Everything's good.
Great. So, you excited as I am for the big rematch this weekend between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder?
Yeah, it should be very interesting. I actually have a kid on the undercard there, so I'll be there live. It'll be very interesting.
Excellent. So who do you have winning the fight? Tough question, but I'll get right to it.
Well, initially I thought Tyson Fury won the first fight. Regardless of the knockdowns, I thought he won the first fight, But this time around, I'm leaning towards Wilder. I just feel like Tyson, if you look at the first fight, he really used all of the stops and did a great job of doing that. He used his feinting, he used his turning, he used, his jab effectively. He smothered when, the few times that he had to smother, he was very effective with his shoulder movement and everything. And I think that threw Wilder completely off. And made him very hesitant. Obviously, he never fought anybody like that. Plus, he was, Tyson was obviously his very best opponent that he had faced. Besides Luis Ortiz, but it's just a different style fight. Tyson moves a lot more with the feints and everything than Ortiz does, And so, I think, with that, I think Wilder knows a little bit to probably be a little more, let the hands go a little more this time around. There were several times where, you saw that Fury, even used the shoulder to step in, and just completely froze Wilder. I think that this time around, Wilder let his hands go a little bit and take a few more chances and with him because of his freakish power. Forget about, who's better at technique, because that's simple. Tyson is. Yeah. But that said, Wilder seems to be getting better with his timing and patience. All he has to do is, like he said, all he needs is 2 seconds to land one. When you got that kind of power, you have the equalizer of the whole fight.
Is there anything that Wilder can do in this rematch to better set up Fury for the punching power and close the gap a little bit quicker?
Sure. The double jab. The first thing he needs to do is the double jab. He just take short steps with it, short chop with the double, and then throw the right behind it. In which again he was waiting and waiting. And the first one just kind of a little bit hypnotized by Tyson's movement. But you can only move it so much. Tyson's not stupid. If Wilder was to come, under his feet, with his legs under him, with the short double jab and the right hand right behind it, you got to get out of the way of that. You got to go to the side or go back, So eventually you're going to cut. You're going to make up that ground, that distance.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe Tyson Fury when he says he's going to come in, take the fight to Wilder, and get him out of there? Or what do you think is the purpose?
No.
Is he psyching himself up? Is he trying to psych out Wilder? It's hard for me to know.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, listen, Tyson Fury, I have a lot of respect for him. As a heavyweight in the building, he's not that. It's not about being dumb. It's just that wouldn't make any sense unless you're just talking about rushing in and tying him up, and then I see that as very dangerous. You have Wilder's long, and he'll stay out there. He's not going to allow you to do that. I remember that Andre Ward used to do that to some of his power punching opponents, where he, jump in, touch, or jump, touch, jump in, grab and turn, But I think that's what, and just neutralize his opponent. But I think that's too dangerous of a thing. Wilder's stance is too wide. He easily gets far away from you for you to try to play that game,
So what do you think Fury can do to improve his chances of both staying on his feet through 12 and getting the victory?
I still think that he can definitely work more. I mean, I feel like he worked more in the first fight. He did a lot of feigning sometimes and not punching. Okay? He did a lot of feigning. He was moving it and putting himself in the right positions and didn't punch. And so, you have to take advantage of that. You hear coaches say sometimes like, "Oh, that was a great defensive move," or "That was a great footwork," but you didn't do anything with it, so you wasted it. And if you watch the first fight, there was a lot of wasted movements like this, where Wilder didn't do anything, and he didn't take advantage of the fact that Wilder didn't do anything. So he definitely would have to try to land some more to put a little bit of hurt, and maybe make Wilder start getting a little frustrated and crazy with that,
Mm-hmm.
You got to break the fighter down,
What do you think makes Wilder so dangerous in rematches and so eager to get in the ring? Is it almost like watching a guy who just picks up so much about his opponents and just targets them?
No, he just knows. He just knows he has the equalizer. Mm-hmm. It's nothing about technique. It's nothing about, I think, that he learned anything. Let's just be really honest. He knows that if he clips you, the most honest thing he ever said was, "You could be winning the whole fight, and all I need is to land one good one."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he relies on. And so I don't think there's all that technical aspect that everybody's thinking, that he's studying everything. He wants to eventually walk you down, in his stance, and uncork a really good right hand.
Mm-hmm.
And his powers, it's one of those things where he generates different fighters. Throughout the history of boxing, has had that freakish power their power is way above average from, the norm. And he's one of those.
Mm-hmm. So
Kovalev had the same thing when he was in his younger years, had the same thing. He hit me at times when we were doing net work or the body with the shield, and I was like, wow, he is harder than some of the heavyweights that I got.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a gift. All right, so last question. I'll just put you on record. What is your final prediction for the fight? How do you think it's going to end?
I think, as much as I respect both fighters and I like both fighters, I think Wilder wins. I think just at some point Wilder's going to catch him. And let's just see, you know what I mean? Fury would have to stay very busy the whole fight and keep turning and actually go into him and turn out, and to throw Wilder off. Like, I'm not sure, how long he can do that. He can't pull straight back. He pulled straight back and got caught in the last fight. So that has to change. He has to pull off at an angle, like a clock. You got to go at 5 o'clock, or you got to go at 3 o'clock to avoid getting hit. If you go straight back at 6 o'clock, that right hand's coming over the top.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
so, should be interesting.
Certainly can't afford to make any mistakes on Saturday, Tyson Fury. That's Derik Santos. Thanks so much for being with us, and we hope your fight are the best on Saturday.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alden.
All right, that was Derik Santos on his prediction and his assessment of Wilder Fury 2. Now I'm going to shift the focus to you, Michael, and put you on the spot as well. Who do you have winning this fight, which is extremely, extremely close on the odds? I've never seen odds this close. I mean, I see Tyson Fury is a 1.1 to 1 favorite right now. I mean, basically even odds as far as I can compute.
Well, I guess that reflects the fact that most people thought that Tyson Fury deserved the decision the first time around. And so one school of thought is that he maybe has Wilder's number. He may be able to repeat that kind of performance. But on the other hand, we saw Wilder connect, and we saw Wilder put Fury on the canvas not once but twice. And and then we take into account the most recent performances from both fighters. Fury did not look that great in his last outing, and he suffered a very bad cut, which I have a feeling that could end up being a factor.
If it reopens and he can't see the punches coming from half of his face.
Yeah, I got a feeling. You never know. Maybe his skin will hold up, but that's definitely a potential factor. And as I say, he didn't look sharp in that fight at all. Wilder didn't look exactly super impressive either for most of his fight, his rematch with Luis Ortiz, but he didn't need to look that great. He just needed 2 seconds to land the big shot and decide the outcome. And I count me among those who has a very difficult time seeing Tyson Fury avoiding that freakishly powerful right hand for 12 rounds. He couldn't do it in the first fight. He didn't avoid it in the first fight. And Wilder did seem to be making adjustments as the fight went on and finding more opportunities to land his shots. So, I mean, we just released today, as you know, Alden, our picks post at thefightcity.com. We've got all the picks from our contributors, the ones who stepped forward and pulled the trigger. And it's very interesting, I think, because we have a diverse set of opinions. We have a number of people who are picking Fury to win, and then a number. It's fairly split. But I'm picking Wilder to answer your question, Alden. I just feel that Fury is talking about going for a knockout. He's talking about being more aggressive. I don't necessarily buy that 100%. I think it's a bit of theatrics. However, it does make sense in a way for him to try and be a little more assertive and take away maybe some punching room from Wilder,
Yep.
and give Wilder some different looks from the first fight. Kind of change things up a bit, switch things up a bit, try and be a bit unpredictable. But in the process, there's just, for me, this sense of inevitability. At some point, the opening is going to be there, and Wilder has that ability to pull the trigger and throw that right hand deadly fast. I just think it's a long time for Fury to avoid it. So and then again, as I say, there's also the potential of that cut opening up. I just see a lot to overcome for.
You bring up deadly hand speed from Wilder. If I had to ask you what you think his peak hand speed is in terms of miles per hour, what do you think he could throw a fastball at in terms of his right hand? No, I'm serious. What do you think he launches right hand at? I saw this on ESPN. They did an assessment of Wilder's punching power and body mechanics.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I did not see that, and I would hesitate to hazard a guess at that. But we've all seen it. He does have an uncanny ability, and see, this is the thing. I suspect he's going to be sharper this time around, and he's actually probably going to lose more rounds, and he's not going to mind it, and he's going to be taking his time, pacing himself a little more, and waiting for that perfect opening, similar to how he performed against Ortiz.
Yep.
I mean, Ortiz was winning that fight. There's no doubt. But then the right angle, the right opening came along, and yes, we saw that it's like a cobra striking. I mean, he's able to get that right hand off extraordinarily quick, with extraordinary power on it. And that one shot can decide the fight. And Tyson Fury, there's no doubting his heart. There's no doubting his fortitude. He got up twice in the first fight, so you can never count him out. But I just have a very difficult time. It's easier for me to envision Wilder at some point blasting through with his power and deciding the outcome, as opposed to Fury overcoming all of the obstacles in front of him, getting through 12 rounds and prevailing. And as far as those people who are, Bob Arum has just come out and said he's predicting Tyson Fury by knockout. I'm sorry, Tyson Fury he does not have much power. I don't see.
He doesn't put much into his punches anyways, and he would be foolish to really commit too hard and get too greedy on his punches against Wilder and really extend himself like that, in my opinion.
I agree. It's a fascinating matchup, and I'm very relieved that it's happening, because last year it seemed briefly like it was supposed to happen, and then the deal fell through or something. So this is very good for the sport. It's a fascinating duel, and it's going to be good for boxing. And I'm hoping for just as interesting and competitive a fight as the first time around. But I'm also anticipating that we may get a highlight reel knockout. And that'll also be good for the sport, because then the matchup, the drums will be beating very loud, I think, for a Wilder versus Joshua fight. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What about you, Alden? How do you see this match?
Well, incidentally, Wilder's peak hand speed is 26 miles per hour, which is faster than Mike Tyson in his prime by
Really?
1 mile per hour. Yeah, it was interesting watching some of the body mechanics that Andre Ward was laying out, and they had pretty good statistics and everything to follow that. But yeah, the thing about Deontay Wilder is that he not only has the hand speed of Mike Tyson, but he has the leverage of a guy like Lennox Lewis. With his extraordinary reach, he has an 83-inch reach. 6'7". He could really launch punches not only quickly, but from the type of angles that could really crush you. I think Fury's best way to win this fight, and I don't buy fully his story that he's going in for a knockout because he needs to win by knockout to win the fight. He can't win a decision. But I think there's some merit in him keeping Wilder occupied, keeping the jack in the box, keeping the jab in his face, keeping the feints going, because Wilder, intentionally or not, it takes him a little while to get set to punch, and he doesn't do a great job of counterpunching. However, if Tyson Fury finds success and he chooses to get greedy, which is something that Ben Davison in the corner in the first fight, who won't be in there in the second fight, kept repeating over and over before Tyson Fury came out. He said, don't get greedy every time. Tyson Fury, it's very plausible that he could land 2-3 punches in a row, maybe even more. Rock Wilder back, score crowd-pleasing flurry of punches. But the longer he keeps himself in the pocket, the longer a guy like Wilder can reset quickly and land his great equalizer of a right hand. A few things Wilder can do differently, in my opinion, to help facilitate the process that to many seems inevitable. I think he's got to work his jab a lot more than he did in the first fight. And it's something that he was able to find success in. He was landing the jab very often against Fury. He just wasn't letting go of it. And not just throwing it to the head, to the body, to the chest. He needs to do something, I think, to break Fury's rhythm, because, although Tyson Fury has to be perfect for 36 minutes, essentially, he's shown that he can be nearly perfect for 36 minutes before, and in many people's opinion, win that fight. So, Tyson Fury, he's not coming off 2 tune-up fights after he was 400 pounds this time. He's certainly in better fighting condition, or so you'd imagine, going into this fight. And, it's very conceivable that Wilder is going to be fighting a better version of Tyson Fury. So he can't just, in my opinion, sit and wait the whole time like he did against Ortiz and wait for the opportunities to arise. He's fighting a taller fighter, a guy with a longer reach than him. Can you believe it? A 7'1" arm span for Tyson Fury, 85 inches. And, Tyson Fury, with his masterful command of distance, his great ring generalship, he can anticipate a lot of Wilder's movements, and he could, he knows his position around the ring. He knows how to laterally move around and keep Wilder turning and keep Wilder from not getting set to punch. Whether he can do that from 36 minutes, I don't think he can. I think there's more upside to Wilder, and I think a thing that makes Wilder so dangerous in rematches and dangerous in the later rounds is that he has a underrated proclivity to acquire a lot of data when he's fighting guys and really track their movements, and he's very perceptive in the ring. And that almost makes it, like you said, like he's a cobra in the sense that he's just sitting there and waiting for something to arise, because he's not just doing that blindly. He's not just doing that out of being lazy or just being purely over-reliant on the power. He's doing that because he wants to target the highlight reel punching power that he will never stop believing in. I mean, it doesn't matter if he is down for 35 minutes and 50 seconds. He still has that same mentality that he can score a destructive knockout with 10 seconds to go or 10 rounds to go. I mean, his self-belief is really unbelievable. It's similar almost to Tyson Fury, and I think that's why it's such a great fight, because these are two of the best fighters in the division. I think the two best fighters in the division. They've both been vulnerable to several aspects of each other in their first fight, and they both have no doubt they're going to win this fight. It almost seems like Tyson Fury, he believes that he rose from the dead in the 12th round against Deontay Wilder, and he's empowered to be more bold in the rematch. I think that can be disputed how he goes about that, but that could be very dangerous. And I think it takes a guy like Tyson Fury to be able to actually believe that will work.
Well, it's interesting because you're highlighting at the moment what makes this matchup fascinating. Both these guys are very strong mentally.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the fact that the late great Emmanuel Stewart, he predicted that both of these fighters would eventually find themselves at the top of the division. And Stewart was a trainer who really focused on toughness, both physically and mentally. I think more mentally than anything. And he recognized in both Wilder and Fury that they had this extraordinary confidence and this mental fortitude. And I am not a huge booster of either fighter. I don't personally believe that we're seeing two of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But we are, I think, as you just said, we are seeing, I think, the two best heavyweights active in the sport today.
Yeah.
And that can't be overlooked. This is the best matchup that the division can offer. And I'm hoping that we get another dramatic, competitive fight, and then I'm hoping we get a trilogy. Like, I'm hoping this will be a rivalry that will be of historic value for the sport. And if anybody can deliver it, it's these two fighters who, as you say, have astonishing mental confidence, mental fortitude, they self-belief. They both have extraordinary self-belief. So yeah, it's a matchup to be looked forward to for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it almost seems like whoever comes out on top here, their unification against Anthony Joshua, if it takes place, would almost be like a formality, in the sense that these guys are so clearly the two best in the sport, in my opinion, in the heavyweight division. And watching Anthony Joshua, get decked 4 times en route to a loss to Andy Ruiz and still not looked so spectacular in the rematch, it really, I would probably be more excited, depending on how this fight turns out on Saturday, with a trilogy than I would a fight with Anthony Joshua. I
agree. Well, Joshua, the thing that always has to be remembered about Joshua is he has regressed. He was I don't think how anyone can deny the fact that he was a better fighter 2, 3, 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, something's gone wrong with Joshua, and he's not the fighter that he was, the fighter that we saw against Vladimir Klitschko. And as for Fury and Wilder in that regard, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure where either guy is at in terms of their prime, but there's no question. I agree with you. There's no question that they are definitely, at this point at least, they deserve to be regarded as a level above Joshua.
Yeah, I really, I'm wholeheartedly with you. I'd rather see these guys fight again than to see Anthony Joshua get to cash in on a mega pay-per-view event against either one of them. With that being said, I still want to see a unified, lineal, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And obviously the only way to get there is to beat Joshua at this point. But, this is such an intriguing rivalry that I'm really in no hurry at all. So
I agree.
So, well, speaking of intriguing matchups, we have an interesting history article coming up next week featuring Roberto Duran and Iran Barkley, middleweight championship fight. Roberto Duran winning his, I'm going to say, 3rd world championship, lightweight, welterweight. Fourth. Yep. He won from Davey Moore, the WBA. Can't forget that. But in my opinion, there's something special with this victory over Iran Barkley. It was one of my favorite Duran performances, despite the fact that Duran was well past his prime, not fighting in the right weight division for him, and against a guy that was probably not fighting in the right weight division for himself either. Iran Barkley is a huge middleweight, a guy that's won the light heavyweight title in his rematch against Tommy Hearns. So how does a blown-up, older lightweight like Roberto Duran beat Iran Barkley, who's in the peak of his career following a stunning knockout over Tommy Hearns in their first fight? How do you do it?
That's a great question, Alden. This is one of those rare matchups that defies the old cliche that a good big man beats a good little man, a smaller man. I mean, Duran really had no business winning this fight, especially when you take into consideration how well Barkley performed. You can make the case actually that this is Barkley's career best performance. He really he fought with controlled fury. He didn't let his emotions get the better of him. He implemented a smart game plan. He targeted Duran's body. He used his jab. He set a wicked pace and put pressure on the older man. And it was a very, very close fight, very close competitive fight all the way. But Roberto Duran that night, I mean, this is one of the great performances in one of the great careers in boxing history. And I never get tired of watching this fight, which for me is the fight of the decade. Well, I don't know, that's maybe going a bit too far, but it's definitely up there in terms of the great fights of the 1980s. Just action from first bell to last, and then you couldn't write a better script with Duran scoring a knockdown in the 11th round. I mean, in the middle rounds, it was clear that Barkley was ahead. It looked like he would naturally, as the younger, bigger, stronger guy, he'd have the edge going into the late rounds. But then, from who knows where, Duran suddenly starts to turn things in his favor in round 9, mounts this amazing comeback, and it culminates with that knockdown in round 11. You couldn't write a better script. It's one of the great fights of Roberto Duran's career, one of the great performances, and anyone listening, if you haven't sat down and watched this fight, you're in for a treat. It's an absolutely great action fight, but fought at a very high skill level, and it's really something special. And so every year we celebrate that matchup and with a feature article and the video of it, and you can't go wrong sitting down and enjoying that matchup. It's one of the great ones.
It's kind of I remember the 11th round knockdown when I first saw it as a kid. It was kind of one of those really feel good knockdowns. It just to see Duran just rallying one punch after another, and then Barkley just drops. It almost felt like watching James Toney in the 12th round against Vasily Girov. One punch. How flushed they were, how devastating, and the impact it was having on his opponent, and the effect in which how Barkley it looked like he just symbolically just dropped. Like he could not take it anymore. And he's so visibly bigger. It was shocking.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of when Bobby Chacon put Bazooka Limon down in the final round of their 15-round classic in 1982. And similarly, very close fight, and Chacon mounted a comeback, which culminated with that knockdown, and he needed that knockdown to get the nod on the judges' cards. And similarly, Duran needed that knockdown to secure the win. It was a very close fight. There were even afterwards some people who argued that really Barkley deserved better. But the moment I'll always remember is that apparently when they were tabulating the scorecards and everyone was waiting for the announcement of the decision at the I can't remember, was it the Boardwalk Hall or the
it was in the Convention Center in Atlantic City. Yeah.
And somebody said and the utterance needed no explanation because the crowd was chanting Duran, Duran over and over again, and they were getting more and more excited as the fight went on. And as they were waiting for the announcement, somebody said, "They can't. They tear the place down." And of course, the statement needed no explanation. I mean, if the decision had been announced in Barkley's favor, I think there could have been some ugliness because people Durant fans are very passionate, and again, this was one of these storybook type fights, as you say. It was a feel good knockdown. It's like this is a fight that Durant is not supposed to win, and he turns in an incredible performance and just nicks it. He just barely gets it. Um, but I don't know. I'm a bit sentimental. I think they got it right, and I like to see Duran's ring brilliance, his skill, his ring intelligence. I like to see that rewarded. I mean, he had no business, a lightweight, coming up and taking on a guy who would win a portion of the light heavyweight title. I mean, come on. It's one of the great performances in boxing history.
Absolutely. I mean, Duran was not a middleweight because he was tired of competing at welterweight. I mean, it seemed like he was almost a middleweight at that stage in his career because he just, wasn't in shape to make 147 or 154. He did not look like he had the, pristine physicality to be a threat at middleweight, and it really showed up against Barkley. It was almost comical how much smaller he looked than Barkley. It's like watching Little Mac and Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I don't know if you ever played that video game, but
Well,
the size differential.
It speaks to, I mean, Barkley's a tough fighter. Barkley was a tough fighter. I mean, not too many guys knock Barkley down. But in the very first round, Durant connects with a right hand and staggers Barkley. I mean, that tells you something about Durant, what an extraordinary fighter he was, and what a gifted puncher he was. It's the last.
Really
I think
commits to his
it's safe
punches.
to say it's the last great performance of Durant's career, truly great performance, and he really put it all together that night. Again, it's one of my favorite fights.
Yeah, seeing Barkley take the amount of punches he took from James Toney at 168, I mean, that was...
Yes.
And just stand right through it. That was ugly. That was some ugly stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't even think Tommy Hearns ever knocked Barkley down. I know he hurt him, but I don't know if he ever knocked him down. Which is pretty phenomenal, 160 and 168, that Barkley was able to come right through those shots. But Duran, as small as he was still able to almost get the job done, almost get him out of there in the 11th round. Tremendous performance.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to reading that. I'm sure everybody else should as well, if they haven't already. Iran Barkley versus Roberto Duran next Monday is the anniversary of that fight. Tremendous fight. Another one of our many Boxiana series in which we feature an in-depth discussion and analysis article on some of the old great fights, Duran Barkley included. But as for this podcast episode, that just about sums it up. I highly encourage everybody to check us out at thefightcity.com. Thanks for being with us, Michael. I hope you have a great night.
Thanks very much, Alden. Glad to be here.
All right. I'll
expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times. Any questions from the challenger?